Origin and history of karate and all of the other, because there's many levels, right?
Yes, there's many aspects of the martial arts. The martial arts actually didn't start out as the martial arts. It actually started through Hindu priests, which began to hear and download things through divination, that they were able to understand the yoga aspects, or that's where we get yoga from today. And the yoga aspects are where the martial arts were actually developed through. The martial arts didn't develop on their own. It took meditation, and through certain practices of meditation and occult activities and divination, that they were given that information as it was downloaded through the spiritual realm.
Can Christians separate martial arts and yoga from its original source?
No, it cannot be separated. Even those that are in the martial arts, that are masters, will tell you, without the spiritual aspects of it, that you cannot separate and receive the power that it takes to operate in any martial arts. That at times there have been those who have said, we can separate and we can take and just use the aspects of fighting or defending, but when you go right back to it, the actual power that is derived and used in the martial arts is the chi, or the ki in some aspects. Some various organizations will call it chi or ki, or even prana. But that power has to come from somewhere. You can't snatch that power from nothing and apply it to your training and say, well, it's just nothing that became something. Fuel must come from somewhere in order to fuel the martial arts and give it the power that it needs in order to be effective.
Did you
yes,
feel that
very
power?
much so.
You did?
Yes. From the very beginning, the very first day that I walked into a dojo in Chicago,
Tell
Illinois.
me that incident. It's in the book.
Yes. When I walked up those stairs, I felt something really weird was happening to me. And even though I'd been in the Marine Corps, was raised on the streets, knew exactly what to expect in certain situations, but when I walked into that dojo, it scared the living daylights out of me, and I didn't understand it until years later, until the Lord revealed what was behind the martial arts.
Okay, now, you, which is unheard of, according to your book.
Yes.
You were a black belt in 1 year.
Yes, less than 1 year.
Okay.
Yes, I made history.
Now, that was a history-making
Yes, it was.
belt.
First non-Oriental out of Japan. I was the first Caucasian to ever make that level of black belt in 11 months. I think it was because of my determination. My determination was to become the best, not to be a black belt or any other degree. My desire was to be the best that I could be, and so I set aside all of the ranking systems, and I decided that I wanted to be the best. I wanted to kick butt with style.
So you could have killed somebody.
Yes, very easily. Saying. The whole training, the whole premise of the training, and so how someone could say that they would train in order to just defend themselves. Defense eventually goes into offense. You can't have one without the other. You can't constantly defend without eventually having to try and take out your partner. Now, in the process of that, what we have found is that aggressiveness will begin to build, and your training immediately, when you begin the training in the dojo, and immediately that training will develop into offensive. You can't do one without the other. That means aggressiveness. And you can't say to someone, well, my desire is just to powder puff tap you.
But they are so polite.
Very polite.
I mean, in cage fighting, they bloody the guy and he is maybe knocked out or whatever, and they will, like this, and hug each other. Okay, I like that. In boxing, they hate each other. They go back to the corner and they just hate each other.
So did the people in the arenas, the gladiators. They were respectful also before they died. And in this particular case, what you're seeing is blood and gore. What is happening is we are being desensitized to the fact that blood and gore is okay, and we're graduating, and at one point, we're going to come to a place where we're going to want more. Eventually, weapons will come into play. Eventually, we're going to see fights to the death if it ever becomes legal in this country, and we never know what's going to happen in this country.
This is the stuff you put in the book that I don't know if I buy. Okay, you and I are just talking around the table here, okay? But let me just lay this premise on you.
Sure.
You are a trained fighter.
Absolutely.
Okay, if we're not going to do this, folks, but if we walked in to a bar, we're not. I don't hang out in bars, neither does he. But if we walked into a bar, and which happens in bars, because every time you're reading the paper, some guy's shot or whatever, and he was at midnight or whatever, bar so-and-so, or 2 a.m. in the morning. So that's what goes on. It's like fights, okay? We walk in there. I would feel pretty protected. I'm walking in with Dr. Vito, and somebody goes with a curse word and says, I'm going to knock your head off. Okay.
My old life, I would have said jump.
Okay. But I'm talking about right now.
Okay.
Okay. Right now. I'm going to knock your head off. And he draws back. Okay. Now, are you going to use this satanic training that you have inside of you? You have all the buttons. You have all the ability. You have all the power, and you know how to use it. Are you going to say, like you did in the book, I took all of my artifacts, all of the gifts that I got, all the trophies, and burned them?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Are you going to let this guy wipe the floor with you because to defend yourself you would have to use satanic abilities? Or are you going to defend yourself?
No. I would not lift a finger to stop him, but I would use the power and authority that I have in Jesus' name, and I would stop him right where he's at. If my faith is in my abilities, then I really don't have faith except the faith of my natural abilities. My faith must come from the supernatural.
So his fist takes a chunk out of your face, and you're going to let him do it again?
No, the chances are I would just move out of the way, but I wouldn't try and stop him. I would discourage him by moving away from him rather than trying to stop him. But
so
I've had situations.
So all of this training, you won't even use ever again?
No, I won't use it again. I've had circumstances.
I can understand exactly where you're coming from.
I've had circumstances where men were violently trying to attack me with words, and they could not get within a 3-foot radius of me because I was protected. The story of Nicky Cruz and David Wilkerson is a prime example that Nicky Cruz had a reputation of never missing, but he couldn't change the situation that was happening there. He couldn't get to David. And in that process, he was able to do nothing. And yet, that day, 2 lives were changed, both David's and Nicky Cruz.
For all eternity.
For all eternity. And today, they're changing the lives of millions of people around the world.
Well, the Bible says, turn the other cheek,
yes.
Right? If someone comes at you, you know, it doesn't say slug him and take him out. It just says, turn the other cheek.
Yes. Jesus didn't use any special techniques. If we were ever going to be taught, and if he wanted us to use any type of technique to defend ourselves, he would have shown us. But he didn't. The opposite.
Well, they beat him to a pulp.
Well, that was at the end of his ministry.
Yeah, they whipped him
yes.
and pulled chunks of flesh out of him with lead-tipped whips.
That's correct. If we're willing to die for our faith, then that's the answer. We must be willing to die. One of the things that I'm always concerned with is that people send children into self-defense classes at taekwondo,
at church.
karate, at churches. Churches are loaded.
Yeah. Churches
are loaded today. It's crept in. I wouldn't have believed it 20 years ago. But they send their children in for self-defense classes. Now, how is a 5, 6, 7, 10, 15-year-old child going to defend themselves against someone who is determined to get them, or maybe armed? How are they going to do it? And I know of cases where they have tried, and what they learned in the dojo did not work on the outside because of fear factors, because of other factors, maybe multiple attackers. It didn't work, and so they were beat up, even reports of some that were killed. So the Karate Kid
movie wasn't true?
I think that movie was from another planet.
How many levels did you get and how many medals?
I achieved 5th degree black belt.
5th degree?
Master status. And I've taken many tournaments, but in recent years, 20 years ago, I won 5 national titles, 5 gold medals I won. I was never interested in titles. I was interested only in the competition aspects of it. And in that competition, what I did find out is that my Christian faith didn't align with what I was doing in the ring. My desire when I went into the ring was not to hug and embrace that opponent that I was up against. My desire kicked in as the old man, and my desire was to either maim or kill him with control.
Now, you said that they have such power that they can knock you down without ever laying a hand on you.
No, that's not quite true.
Okay.
They can do it with a very slight punch or kick or whatever.
So they,
but there's going to
so they can't just stop.
No, there's no such thing. There is an extension of power, but it just doesn't stop before it hits the target. It must continue on and touch that person. Where I was trained to stop within a quarter of an inch of that person, I think what most people don't understand, especially when they see the cage fighting, the pride fighting, and all of these things, is that what they're seeing is glorified street fighters that have had some training in the martial arts.
Oh, yeah.
And so in that fighting, you see there, I've seen them go in there with crosses tattooed all over their backs, and I've seen them with all of these Christian symbols and go in there and try to dismantle that person any way that they can. Now, is that God's love? Is that Christian? A Christian walking the life of love, or is that someone who is trying to do great bodily harm to that other person?
See, you've stopped preaching and gone to meddling now.
Sort of.
Now, were you a Christian when you were winning all these medals and you were into this full-time?
Yes, I
were you a
was.
Christian then?
Yes, I was. I
Okay.
came out of the martial arts after I got saved. I had an elder in a church say, let's bring it back in, Vito. Let's Christianize it, clean it up. We'll call it Christian martial arts. And in that moment, I knew it was wrong, but you know what? It didn't make any difference because I respected that man of God.
But if you put the Christian name on it, doesn't it make it Christian?
Well, if we put the Christian name on prostitution, does it make it Christian?
Very good. I like this
Well,
guy.
he's got all this in the book. It's supposed to have feeding.
I know, but it's great.
He's really good.
All right, now, just one more thing now.
Sure.
All right, so you became a Christian, what, at a young age?
1971. I was 30 years old.
Okay. And at that time, you already were into this martial arts big time.
I was instructing 4 different universities. I also had my own dojo. So
Okay.
He's
So
making
you
a
weren't a
living.
Christian when you started this then?
No,
You
I
became
wasn't.
a Christian when you were into
Yes.
it big time.
That's right.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yes, and after I got out, I had church leaders bring me back in and say, let's use this as an evangelistic
all right.
tool.
Did you know right off the bat when you became a Christian that what you were doing was wrong?
No, it took a while. I saw something that I had never seen before. I was at a tournament that I was conducting, and I saw something that happened in slow motion, and the Lord showed me. Everything became surreal as I watched these 2 young men. They were about 10, 11 years old, and one had fear on his face, the other had terror on his face, and the people in the audience were shouting out, kill him, knock him down, beat him up. And the Lord stopped me and said, look what you have created.
Wow.
Look what you're involved in. And it slowed down for me, and I don't know how that happened, but when it slowed down, I could see everything as though it was floating around me, and the Lord began to speak to me, and he said, is this what you want to remain in? Is this what I've called you to be and do? And at that point, I came under conviction, and I stopped the match in the middle, and the audience was just mesmerized by what was happening because they'd never seen this before, and I began to speak to the audience, is this what you want for your children?
Wow.
Wow,
And
really?
it made a huge change. And it was about a year later, 9 months to a year later, that the Lord said, now, give it up, son. You've wrapped that belt around you long enough. Now it's
So
time.
it took a year or so before
Oh, yeah,
you...
it took almost a year, but it was at
Really?
another tournament that I came to the place that I realized the Lord said, now do it. And I had to listen,
Yeah.
or I would be in total disobedience to the Lord.
And Sicilian Italians, they go for the throat.
And a whole lot more.
70,000 Hindu missionaries in the U.S., yoga instructors, and many are claiming to be Christians
Yes.
in your book.
Many.
Yeah.
Many are claiming to be Christians, but the Hindu gurus know. They know what is connected to it. And so in essence, what they've been saying, that our mission is complete. We are now ready to take over Christianity because we have entered churches and we've We've had all of these people that we're training in our yoga studios that are now at a place that they are part of us because what we have, they now have. There was a transfer of that Hindu religion, and it's basically Hinduism is the old term, New Age is the new term, and so they've now incorporated that into the training methods that they're incorporating in American yoga.
How about Christians that practice yoga? Because I know some that do. What is that? They cross their legs and they do this thing.
Yeah,
what is that?
That's a form of meditation. That is actually what they're doing. That meditation is actually making connection with Shiva. Shiva is one of the three main Hindu gods, Shiva, Brahman, and Vishnu. And these three are actually behind this mess that we're in America right now. And
what
so,
do you mean by that?
Well, what they're doing, see, Vishnu is the one that is in control. He is the strong man. He is the strong man, if you will, in the atmosphere that controls the Hindu people. And everywhere that you go in India, you will see these people that are actually in Hindu positions. They're actually in positions where they're worshiping the Hindu god Shiva.
Wow. Well, if I don't want to worship that God, you mean it's still I'm worshiping it?
The positions are still the same.
Wow. Okay. Alternative therapists. I mean, these people that you go in and they put these rocks on you, or maybe they have this music or whatever, and you're getting these therapy. And you say in your book that, yeah, many times people walk out there and say, you know, I've never felt this good in weeks. I'm loose. You're saying because they're touching you.
Right, the laying on of hands. The laying on of hands is as old as man. And that laying on of hands, when they're touching you, and I do describe that in the book, that when they're laying hands on you and you're open to that, you're submitting to that, they have a right to transfer things to you. And people don't understand. But if a blessing can be laid on you by the laying on of hands, then so can a curse. And so what you have spirituality, spiritual beings that are actually being transferred to people. Now, I'm not saying everyone. So people might misunderstand and say, well, you can't lay hands on any. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that the possibility is greater when you submit to these people, whether it's the evil
and their
twins.
background may be in Hindu, or
yes,
they might
exactly.
be in some
right.
Eastern religion.
That's right. Absolutely. All of it is from Eastern religions.
Yeah,
all of it.
Is.
None of it is separate. So how do you Christianize or move away from religions that are seeped in divination, which is the counterfeit of the divine, by the way? Mm-hmm. And the divine is what the counterfeit is doing.
What if this therapy is the only way I can get this back released?
Well, then I would ask the Lord to just straighten you out. Do some more exercises.
Chuck Norris, committed Christian.
As we hear.
See, now you quit preaching and gone to meddling.
I've gone to meddling.
but I mean, I've heard him.
I like Chuck Norris. I really do. I really like him.
Could you have whipped him in your
in competition? I think I may have been able to do it. We're training two different styles, but I think I would have been able. He trained at one time. He tried to train under an instructor that I had trained in Los Angeles, and he couldn't take the training. It was different. They're different. It's like softball and baseball.
Yeah.
It's like basketball and football. There are differences in them.
Bruce Lee.
Never fought a day in his life. All he did was show a lot of fast moves because he was thin and fast, but he never did anything physically.
But there was almost like an evil force because the
way
he died, the way his son died.
Yes, he will admit that his fear gripped him more than life itself. And his fear, the demons that was passed down from his father to him and then eventually to his son Brandon were also a part of the occult activity that he was involved in. He was raised as a Roman Catholic. And he eventually, when he was away from home, he turned into an atheist. And I also read that. You can read that in my book, but you can go to his website. And I always say, if I'm going to back something up, I'm going to show where it's at in my book, where people can go and do their own research.
Imaginary opponent. Did you do that?
All the time.
So what is when they're going to break the bricks? What is all of that?
Stupidity.
Really? Does that give you power? Does that give you power?
No, it's the key eye. It's the generation or the key that flows through you, that when that key eye comes, that's the empowerment of a spiritual entity that's actually giving you the strength to be able to do that.
And there is a death touch?
They claim that there's a death touch, but I refute that in my book, because you can go through the book and you can read that the death touch is rather strange, because why would you use a death touch on someone, and that death touch in turn, how do they come back to life? But some of these people that claim they have a death touch, a death yell, these are the really weird and wacko ones that are involved in these strange, out-of-the-way things that are in the martial arts.
So you destroyed all your trophies and everything and burned them on Halloween?
Totally. Wow. Totally destroyed.